Good morning. We're back at the State Emergency Operations Center here in Tallahassee. I'm joined with Kevin Guthrie, our Florida DEM Executive Director, as well as Jared Perdue, our Florida Department of Transportation Secretary, and Major General John Haas, the Adjutant General of the Florida National Guard. As you know, Hurricane Helene made landfall last night as a Category 4 hurricane at Deckle Beach in Taylor County. Maximum sustained winds were 140 miles per hour. It made landfall moving 23 miles per hour. We saw storm surges in many parts of the west coast of Florida that exceeded what we saw in Hurricane Idalia, which took a similar track. It was similar strength, maybe a little bit weaker, but you were seeing significantly more storm surge in places like Tampa Bay. We also saw major storm surge, of course, in the Big Bend region. We did report that there was a traffic fatality last night. We also this morning can report that there's been another fatality reported in Dixie County due to a tree falling on the home during the storm. Overnight, as soon as it was safe to do, and even in many cases probably wasn't perfectly safe to do, search and rescue operations were conducted to help people that were in distress and transport them to safety. These missions continue, but we've had thousands of missions successfully completed in the overnight hours throughout the state. This is our local first responders. This is local in conjunction with state assets and state assets directly going in and effectuating rescues, and that's the National Guard, that's Florida Fish and Wildlife, that's all the assets we had available to help support these rescue efforts. And all the calls that any state officials responded to last night, we were able to find the person or people and pets and bring them to safety. And so that's a contrast from some of the things that we saw, for example, at Hurricane Helene. And now it's still early. They're going to have those folks who were responding to those calls. They're going to be doing broader search and rescue in those areas that did get hit with significant storm surge and see if there's any other problems or if there's any folks that are still left behind. But as of now, we don't have reports of that. And so those missions were successful, and those missions saved a lot of lives. So I want to thank all the first responders, our folks working for the sheriff's departments, fire rescue, of course, all our state assets. Everyone was ready to go. I mean, it made a big difference for what was a really historic storm surge in different parts of the state. We have currently, as of 6 a.m., 1.24 million accounts without power throughout the state of Florida. Since the storm has begun, there have been 1.16 million accounts that have already been restored. As of 6 a.m., we have 382,000 accounts for Duke, 284,000 for the co-ops, 253,000 for the munis, 233,000 for FPL, 77,000 for TICO, and 11,000 for FPU. So those restoration efforts are underway. They've been going on the entire time as people have lost power, and so I think you're going to see some progress on that throughout today. As of now, we have a number of severely impacted counties with over 30% of the power out. Alachua 55% out, Baker 86%, Bradford 65% out, Citrus 34% out, Clay 33% out, Columbia 99% out, Dixie 92%, Gilchrist 87%, Hamilton 99%, Jefferson 83%, Lafayette 81%, Leon 44%, Levy 83%, Liberty 33%, Madison 99%, Nassau 57%, Pinellas 41%, Polk 33%, Suwannee 99%, Taylor 99%, Union 86%, Wakulla 82%. And you notice those 99% counties are generally the counties that were in the immediate path of the storm. We had rescue operations going on like Southwest Florida, where the storm was 100, 150, 200 miles off the coast, and yet still generated major storm surge, and that was really the story up the whole Florida peninsula. But then as you got into landfall, where you had those Category 4 winds, there's no question that that was going to disrupt the power operations. And so that's what you've seen. Probably not just simply power lines down in the immediate path of the storm, probably looking at some damage to substations. And so there's folks that are on the ground assessing and taking action to remedy that as soon as possible. Overnight, the cut and toss operations began at 3 a.m. with the Florida Department of Transportation, and they have been able to clear a lot of miles of roadway, over 2,000 miles just since the wee hours of the morning. I-10 is open and passable, but please drive with caution. I-75 north to Georgia is clear and passable, and FDOT cut and toss crews are pushing southward on I-75 currently. In Tampa Bay, the Sunshine Skyway, Gandy, Courtney Campbell, and Howard Franklin bridges are still closed at the moment. At first light, bridge inspections began. There are reports of some mapping applications not marking those bridges as closed, but as of right now, please choose alternative routes. Those bridges are going to be inspected and open in due time, and I know Jared and his team are working really hard to do that. The Sunshine Skyway is open to first responders and emergency personnel. Please listen to local law enforcement's directive on that. In Southwest Florida, Sanibel Causeway had a washout that's currently being repaired by FDOT, and we expect that to be okay relatively soon. 470 crews are active in the field, and as I mentioned, have cleared over 2,000 miles of roadway, and this was starting at 3 a.m., so they were ready to go, and it's made a difference. 129 bridge inspectors have been dispatched at first light, and they are currently inspecting the bridges in the impacted areas. Airports. Following airports have suspended service but are anticipated to resume operations at some point today. Tallahassee, Tampa International, St. Pete Clearwater International, Lakeland Linder International, Gainesville Regional. Some flight cancellations or delays are being reported. Just check with your airlines directly on specific flight updates. Florida Fish and Wildlife has boat teams in Dixie and Taylor counties actively conducting search and rescue. These are basically the ground zero of the storm. An additional team of 72 staff are en route to Taylor, Dixie, and Levy with shallow water boats. Florida Fish and Wildlife has a boat team of 15 going through Franklin and Wakulla counties to assess storm damage. From Hernando to Lee, FWC has 145 local officers that are responding, an additional 15-man airboat team that are coming over to the west coast of Florida from Titusville. They will also have a 16-man Florida State Guard team with them, and they are headed currently to Pinellas County to assist with search and rescue there. Florida Department of Law Enforcement has positioned assets, including aircraft, and is responding for reconnaissance and damage assessments, including all backup satellite and communication systems. Portable towers have been staged for emergency communications, and FDLE staged telecommunications emergency response task forces for responses to ensure continuity of service for the 911 system. Of course, we have Florida Highway Patrol that have been assisting local officials throughout the whole time, and they are deployed and working as necessary. They are also assisting with cut and toss operations, clearing down trees and debris from not just the interstate and state roads, but also assisting with clearing local roads. The Department of Environmental Protection is actively working with local water providers to determine impacts to local water systems, and we do have reports that there are some issues with some of the local water systems. As of this morning, there are 54 healthcare facilities on generator power across the state, 5 hospitals, 26 ALFs, and 17 nursing homes. So this morning, as you're surveying damage, if you do have damage, just please be cautious of down power lines in your area. Standing water can conceal down power lines and other hazards, so please do not be walking through those storm waters. Remember to use proper ladder safety. You want to avoid any injuries or deaths as a result of people trying to get on ladders and not doing that appropriately. If you use a generator, again, there's power outages and 1.2 million. You're going to be added to that 1.1 million that's been restored, I think, relatively quickly because everyone's on it. But there's going to be a time where you don't have power, perhaps. If you use a generator, don't operate it inside your house. Make sure that generator is outside your house, away from windows and doors. Carbon monoxide getting into the house can be lethal if it accumulates indoors. If traffic lights are out in your area, remember to treat that as you would a four-way stop. We don't want to see any traffic accidents as a result of that. Some of those signals are out. They will be brought back online, I think in due time, relatively quickly, but there's going to be a period of time where they may not be operating appropriately, and so treat it as a four-way stop. Remember, be careful using chainsaws. We've had mishaps with chainsaws in the past. I know people, there may be debris, there may be things they want to do around their property, and of course you're entitled to do that, but just know this has been an issue that we have seen in storms past. Please listen to the guidance issued from your state and local officials, the Florida Division of Emergency Management, as well as your local EM officials. If you need assistance, non-emergency assistance, now that the storm has passed, you can call the State Assistance Information Line at 1-800-342-3557. Additionally, the Hope Florida line is active for those who need resources or other assistance after the storm, and it's currently now operating 24/7 for the next 2 weeks. And if you want that, and this will be the Hope van, we're going to have the Hope bus in different parts of the state. This is a place where a lot of these charity groups that come and help, they're going to be plugged in here, and it's a way to kind of get you to some help that you need. Kevin and I will be surveying kind of what all groups are going to be involved, but I mean, you look and see some of the flooding that's happened. We've got groups that do muck and gut. Is Rubicon, are they going to be en route? Probably, yeah. So, Rubicon, great group. They come in, they help you with muck and gut. We have a program where we can bring tools and the supplies so they can use that. So there's a whole host of things. So the Hope line is 1-833-GET-HOPE, 1-833-GET-HOPE. There's a card where they have the little the little thing you can scan if you want to get on that. They gave that to me 2 days ago, and they're like, you can show this if you want. And I was like, well, is this for pre-storm or post-storm? I'm like, well, mostly post-storm. And I'm like, okay, what are the hours of this? They're like, well, 9 to 5. I'm like, no, I'm not giving out a number 9 to 5. Like, it's got to be open 24. So we made sure to get that number open and operating 24 hours. Now, I think now that the storm's passed, probably most of the stuff's going to be in business hours, but I didn't want to be in a situation someone calls at 8 at night, they have a need, and no one's there. So this has been expanded for 24 hours, and so that Hope line is there for your assistance as well. I just want to thank everybody who midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. were out there rescuing folks. This is not something that's easy. The conditions were still very problematic in many respects up and down the state, and yet we had our folks respond, and we said that this would be what would happen, because that's just kind of what we do here in Florida, but yet a lot of folks that made a big difference. While many people across the country were sound asleep, you had these folks that were out there putting themselves on the line and helping their fellow Floridians. So thank you for that. Okay, Kevin?
Good morning, everyone. Governor, again, thank you for your steadfast leadership and support all the way through the night as we were working all night long to help the citizens of Florida. Hurricane Helene, as mentioned, has made landfall in the Big Bend region as of last night around 11 p.m. What we're in the process of doing right now, the first 24 hours we focus on search and rescue. Over the next 48 hours, we will add what we call search, secure, and stabilize. So we want to search the area, make sure that we look for life issues, life safety issues. Then we will secure the area to keep things from getting worse, and then obviously stabilize it. So that's what we're focused on over the next 72 hours. As those search and rescue missions happen today and continue, please do not go out and visit the impacted areas. I beg you. We literally have over 1,500 search and rescue personnel in the highly impacted areas right now. Do not get in their way. We need you to stay off the roads, get out of our way so that we can go do our jobs. Listen to your local authorities for updates on when it is safe to go outside or when it is safe to return to your homes for those evacuated. Remember to take when you get back home, remember that you take close-up and far-away pictures of any damages and high water marks before you begin any cleanup. The best way to combat a bureaucrat down the road is make sure you do the documentation in the first 24 hours. Make sure you have all of that stuff as you move forward. All right. I know that these are fights with insurance companies and other federal agencies. Just again, FEMA's going to want all the documentation. So take the pictures now as you get out at first light. If you are beginning the cleanup process, be sure that you're wearing the appropriate safety gear. Again, you heard the governor talk about the use of chainsaws, the use of ladders, things like that. Folks, please, I know it's not fashionable, but wear your safety goggles, wear gloves, wear a hard hat. Just please make sure you're being safe if you're out there operating. Those are all preventable deaths and injuries. We can 100% prevent that. If you do not know how to use equipment, if you do not know how to do those heavy lift capabilities, please do not attempt to clean up that material on your own. We will help you. We have nonprofit organizations. You heard the governor speak about Hope Florida this morning. You can go to their website. You can put in the requested assistance that you need. We're the Activate Hope side of Hope Florida, so we are right now trying to get everybody to go to the portal, put in what your issues are. We will start triaging that. We will get people to you. We will be announcing later today the crisis cleanup line being open for cleanup issues. But again, we have people that will help you do that. There's no reason to put yourself in any type of danger. If you're out in the yard, don't cut lines. You're not a resident expert on what is a power line, a cable line, or a fiber optic line. The reason I ask you not to cut those lines is some of our 911 centers across the state run on fiber or cable. If you cut a fiber optic line, you may be cutting communication to a 911 center, even at the residential level. So please, please do not cut lines. We beg you to do that. Beg you not to do that. Make sure you, when you start taking debris to the roadway, again, I know this is going to sound bureaucratic, but it would really help folks like Jared, the DEP, but separate it. If you can separate the vegetation from the white goods, the appliances and the furniture and stuff like that that's coming out of your house, and also separate the household chemicals that may have spilt, like your bleaches and fertilizers and things like that. If you could separate those into 3 distinct piles, it would certainly help the cleanup process as we get in there and start taking care of those issues. Please make sure that your debris does not block any roadways. Please do not do that. If your power lines are down, again, we've already told you do not go and put stuff at the power lines. Hold off on cleaning the debris until the power lines can get to the power line companies can get to the power lines. They need to have access to that right away. So just hold off on it just a second. Let the power crews get in there and do what they need to do. Then bring that stuff to the right of way, but do not block the road. Even though the storm has passed, the roads are still dangerous due to flooding, debris, and potential down power lines. Please just do not risk going anywhere that you cannot see what's going on the roadway. I'm going to let Jared talk much more about road and roadway infrastructure. Again, as the governor has already said, Hope Florida is open 24 hours a day. We're going to be announcing crisis cleanup a little bit later today for assistance after the storm. You can also call our state assistance information line. What is the difference there? Hope Florida crisis cleanup, I need help. Cell line, the state of assistance information line, I just need information. I need to know which way to go, do this or that. That cell information line, just to get information, 1-800-342-3557. Of course, you could go to the Florida Division of Emergency Management's website at floridadisaster.org, and specifically for the updates, add a /updates so that you get the latest and greatest information. Also, we post all of this information to include our updates on X and Instagram at FLSERT, that's at Florida CERT, and then on Facebook at FDEM, that's at FDEM. Governor and John, Jared, and the entire, and as I close here, thank you, sir, for everything you did into the wee hours of the morning. But the state emergency response team is all of the state agencies that come together. It's nonprofits. It's everybody that you see sitting on that floor behind me, and then extensions to tens of thousands of people out in the field. And last night at 11:30, midnight, They went into action, and as the governor said, saved thousands of lives. And, it's an honor to lead this team through this type of stuff. And I just cannot say thank you enough to the state emergency response team, our partner agencies, our partner nonprofits. They are truly the tip of the spear. So, again, thank you to all.
All right. Thank you, Governor, for your leadership. Yep. Thank you, Kevin. As you heard from the governor and Kevin, we've had thousands of people working through the night. We've already begun our damage assessments, and we're pushing into the impacted areas in those rural communities to do cut and toss. We started at 3 a.m. clearing the interstate, I-10, I-75. Those crews worked all the way through the night. And as you heard the governor mention, we're happy to say that I-10 and I-75 are both open. Tampa Bay did experience significant storm surge. You heard the governor talk about the causeways and the Skyway Bridge. We have crews, FDOT crews and contractors out there working right now to inspect. Some of the causeways were underwater, so we have to inspect those, make sure they're safe to pass, affect any repairs to damage that might be out there, and also clear the roads of debris. So we currently are out there working. We're going to get those open as soon as possible. In Southwest Florida, we also had a lot of storm surge. All up and down the West Coast, we had a lot of roads underwater. When roads go underwater, it can be very dangerous. If you are out driving around, those roads are still underwater. Please do not drive through water. It can be very dangerous. You don't know what's going on underneath the water. 470 crew members are deployed to perform cut and toss. We've already cleared over 2,000 miles of roadway, and as I mentioned, we're pushing into those impacted areas of Taylor, Levy, Dixie counties, and all through that storm impact zone. And we're going to be removing vegetative debris. There is a lot of vegetative debris. There's a lot of debris in the roads. Trees can be wrapped in power lines. Please do not get out there and start trying to do things on your own if trees are wrapped in power lines. We send our crews out with utility companies to make sure those lines are de-energized so that we can safely remove that debris from the roadway. Our bridge inspectors are out working right now. This is one of our main missions right after the storm passes through, is to inspect all of our bridges, do damage assessments, start any repairs that are needed, and clear those bridges so that people can start to move around again. What's most important is supporting that search and rescue life safety mission, which is why we're allowing emergency vehicles to drive over Skyway right now. But there is debris even along those causeways, and so we still have a lot of work to do. We're assessing traffic signals right now. We have generators, and we are actively deploying those for traffic signals that are out. If you come up to an intersection and a traffic signal's out, please treat that like a four-way stop. Be very mindful that there could be traffic coming from every direction. For traffic info and road closures, please use fl511.com. We've heard a lot of reports. We've seen the navigation apps have not had up-to-date information. fl511.com is our website. We are actively updating that minute by minute with our regional traffic management centers. We have 10 across the state. They work around the clock, and we have technology deployed. We're continuously collecting data. fl511.com is your place for accurate traffic information. You heard the governor talk about the airports. All of our airports do plan to open back up to air operations today. There was a lot of storm surge with our seaports, specifically in Tampa Bay. They plan to get Seaport back open as quickly as possible. They have to inspect the channel, but their fuel operation will be back up and running within the next few hours, and they have been moving fuel all through the night. So they've had a very successful operation there. Again, Governor, thank you for your leadership. I'm very honored to be part of this emergency response team. We've been working all through the night, and we have a lot more work to do, and we're ready to get it done. Thank you.
And I think people that have followed, the storms in recent years are not unfamiliar with the track that this one took, because it's similar to what was done with Idalia in 2023, and it was similar to Debbie earlier this year. The early reports and so you have a lot of those Big Bend counties. This is the third storm that they've dealt with in 13 or 14 months, and that's not easy to deal with. And then the early reports we've received is that the damage in those counties that were really in the eye of the storm has exceeded the damage of Idalia and Debbie combined. So we have, as I mentioned, a lot of folks that are on the ground there, in the water there, working on search and rescue. That will continue. That's going to continue across the state today to make sure that people are safe and that we're protecting life and limb to the extent that that's something that's still threatened. Look, we've reported 2 fatalities. I pray that that's it, but I also know this was these are hazardous conditions. And so they're going to be doing this. They're going to be on the ground, particularly in those Big Bend areas that got the direct impact. And I know that they're going to work hard. But this is some serious damage there. And it's one thing to have to deal with really major damage, but then when you've already been rebuilding from one and then this, that takes a toll, I think, emotionally and mentally as well. So keep those folks in your thoughts and prayers. We're going to have a lot of assistance that's going to go down their way, but the reality is that this is something that was very damaging. Now we're really, 12 hours away from, not even that, from when this made landfall. There have been people that have been working really this whole time on these operations. Those operations are going to continue, as Kevin said. We'll be doing more things for stabilization, but we will definitely be focused on making sure everyone's safe, making sure that the roads and the bridges are open, people can get around, and then make sure the power is restored and other services are restored. And we expect to see a lot of progress on that very soon. Okay, yep.
Governor, I know you mentioned the 2 fatalities, and you hope that that number doesn't grow, as we all do, but does it give you any hope that, at least in these initial moments, it is only 2 at the moment?
I mentioned all the rescue operations that were done, somebody had called in, mostly probably 911, and folks go, whether it was local, state, or a combination, and the folks that called were found. And were safe and were brought to safety. That is different than, say, Hurricane Ian, where you had some folks that didn't, a lot of people that stayed behind, didn't evacuate, and then you had monster surge, and it was this type of thing where they just couldn't survive it. And so you had, unfortunately, a lot of those missions were going and the people had passed away. So we didn't have that so far. Not saying it can't happen, not saying when you get into Keaton Beach and some of these areas that you won't see that. It's possible, but I was just glad to hear that these rescue missions have been successful. And these were not easy missions all the time because you're trudging through some hazardous stuff. We had boats out with Fish and Wildlife. We had helicopters out with Florida National Guard. The local first responders were marshaling all their assets to be able to go. So they made a really big difference, and we're pleased that those were successful efforts. But they're ongoing, and there's going to be, as I mentioned, if there was a certain part of the state where there were calls in and they went and they found the folks, brought them to safety, great, but there may be other homes there or other structures that they didn't necessarily get a call from. Well, they're going to go and check those today, and they're going to go to see. And it may be that they find something, hopefully not, but that's where they are. But they were successful in these very quick response. And we always say, if you stay behind, just understand you may not get immediate response if it's very dangerous, because a sheriff or National Guard leader, they're not going to want to send people in if that's going to cause casualties or run the risk of that. But I think what you saw is I think a lot of people did go out in hazardous conditions. I think that they put themselves at risk in order to make sure other people were safe, and that's very admirable.
You mentioned that the early damage was worse than the previous 2 storms combined. We've seen pictures of buildings that survived Dahlia and Debbie and are now 2x4s in a parking lot. What's your initial reaction and response, and kind of your message to these people that survive these storms and now go back to nothing?
Well, what I said, just a minute ago about when you get hit by a big storm like Idalia, it's tough. And then to have Debbie come, it's like, well, we're trying to get back on our feet. And when you have a major hurricane, it's not something that just is done in 6 weeks. I mean, there's things you do immediately, of course, but there's a longer term rebuild that happens. And so to have something that was even bigger than those 2 storms cause a lot of damage, I think it is a sense of trauma for the community. I think there's a demoralization, because it's like, okay, we worked all this, and then now we could potentially be worse off than we were even before Idalia. So we're mindful of that, and as I said, we're gonna have support there. It's not going to be easy, but we'll get through it. Really unfortunate the way the track went, from the sense of these communities that have been impacted. Now, the track as it was a little bit, maybe 36 hours ago, had it a little bit west of Tallahassee, that would have been more damage in the capital. I mean, here in the EOC, we had very little, relatively speaking, compared to what I think people were thinking about 24 hours ago. So that's just the way these things go, and this thing went in a direction where it went through a path that had already been trodden with hurricanes. It caused damage in the past, and now this is causing even more damage. So it's tough.
Is the state doing anything differently now to prepare for storms, since this area has been hit 3 times in a row?
Well, I think every time, so our preparations are always, I think that they've improved every time. I think we've had great prep. I think people have acknowledged that. But everything we've done is like, okay, we had a storm. What can you do going forward? I mean, for example, these flood protection devices, you had those in places, like Live Oak, that the downtown always floods, right? So they're like, yeah, the exact same thing happened, 40 years ago, same thing. So they put these devices around the buildings, and the reports are that it was effective. So you learn from some of these things. So yes, there was assets that were available. What about the Taylor? I think they use some of the stuff as well. So yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing that. You want to add to that?
To the question about do we get better? We strive to learn something from every single disaster that we have, and get better at it. I want to applaud the governor. When I came on as the deputy director for him, and then on to be the director, he was like, Kevin, we've got to make sure that we're increasing our capability and our capacity. We need to make smart decisions. We made in purchasing equipment versus renting and leasing equipment. If it's more cost effective to buy it, we buy it. And through this governor, there have been gains at the Florida National Guard, Florida Department of Transportation, Florida Fish and Wildlife, Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Just about every public safety, front-facing public safety or infrastructure agency has notice gains from us getting better at what we do. And that's forward thinking. I mean, that to be able to have a governor that leads in that direction, that's forward thinking. So out of this, we will certainly have conversations about, okay, can we be better? Can we be faster to the mission right after the disaster, right in those 2-3 hours after it? Did we effectively respond? Yes, we effectively respond. Can we cut that down to 90 minutes? Can we cut it down to 60 minutes? We're going to be challenging ourselves. All the agency heads have already taught this morning, especially on the public safety side, of how do we get faster? How do we get better at getting those things done? And we'll continue to do that.
So we are going to, of course, continue with the rescue and recovery efforts throughout today. We're also going to be in a position to get a better assessment of the damage that has been left in the wake of this storm. I know that Kevin and his team, as well as Jared, they're working to make sure that there's access for folks to go help down in the areas that were right there, kind of the impact zone of ground zero. We're going to be out in the field surveying some of the damage ourselves in various parts of the state. So this was a large storm in terms of how big it was. Obviously, when you have 140 mile an hour winds, that's very significant. Generated a lot of surge in different parts of the state. I think that's going to subside today, but it's obviously left a lot of damage. It's necessitated a lot of rescue efforts. Those rescue efforts have been successful. We thank everybody who has been involved in that. And of course, we're going to continue working to make sure that the utilities have what they need to be able to get in and have a strong power restoration. And those efforts are very important as well. Thanks.